Well, welcome to the Girlfriend Doctor podcast, Christina. It is great to have you here, another like-minded soul, to talk about food and the right and wrong way to prep it, prepare it, eat it, and how important. And I love how you say, really how whole food is so important in our diet. I mean, not just important, but like essential, and it makes sense. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, tell our listeners a little bit about your background, your journey to get here.
Yeah, I used to be a restaurant chef many moons ago. But like many women, I ended up so sick. I was about to turn 30 and I had this 2-year-old baby that I was just weaning. And in the 2 years postpartum, I piled on weight. I mean, I know some people lose weight when they breastfeed. I was the opposite. I just packed on like 35, 40 pounds. And my autoimmune disease, I have an inflammatory skin condition called Hidradenitis Suppurativa, and it's medieval and horrible. And I've had it since I was 13. Never made the connection with food. Doctors didn't tell me about it. But after having my son, it started spreading to other areas of my body. It was just unbearable. And I was fatigued and joint pain and brain fog.
So let's talk about that
And
hidradenitis suppurativa. I mean, it is boils basically. You can get them under your arm, between your legs, the
Mhm.
back of your leg, skin area. And it is painful. It's uncomfortable. And of course, there's a lot of emotion that goes with it too. Like the thing feeling like, oh my gosh, like what's happening to me to have these boils.
Right. It's debilitating in many ways. And it manifested on my body when I was a teenage girl. And I grew up in Miami. So we'll talk about extra
Bikini, body
traumatizing
image, right?
everything. And yeah, navigating like dating and my sex life in my 20s with scars and active boils and band-aids. And it was a whole thing. But you learn to live with it and deal, and just lots of creams and lots of gauze and, a whole thing. And I got married, had my son, and it just got so bad. I mean, when I was breastfeeding, it started manifesting under my breasts, which it
Oh,
hadn't ever before. But just be breastfeeding, and then like, it was just, it was horrible. It was a nightmare. And I just remember hitting that point where I was 30 days out before I turned 30. And I told my husband, I'm like, I'm not okay. I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to raise our son. We just got stationed in Hawaii. So we're living in this hotel room in Hawaii. And I'm feeling so lost and just broken. And I thought, this is supposed to be the best years of my life. Like, young married couple with this beautiful baby. We're living in paradise and I am miserable. And so I look to food because food is my jam. Like, that's what I do. And I've always known there's a connection there. And although I always ate organic, I was vegan a while back, like for a while in like my 20s. My mom owns a farm to table restaurant. I always tell people, you can eat healthy, but you might not be eating healthy for you. I ate whole wheat and I ate, all this stuff, but yeah, I wasn't okay. It wasn't working.
well, we
So
need to emphasize that you can eat healthy. I mean, that's a huge nugget, right? You can eat healthy, but
healthy
it wasn't healthy for me.
for you. Right.
Mhm.
And I think, and of course, the things that they taught us, the lower fat, like being afraid of fat. And I was doing oatmeal and things that I thought were supposed to help me, but I just kept getting worse. And I was doing Weight Watchers and the weight kept piling on. And I was like, I felt broken. And I had dabbled in paleo back in 2008 with a holistic practitioner in Miami. And I remember thinking that felt pretty good. That felt pretty good. So I went down this rabbit hole on the internet. And of course, 5-6 years ago, the Google was a lot better. It wasn't as censored as it is now. And I found a post on Rob Wolf's website by Tara Grant, this woman who had my skin condition, and she put it in remission through food. And I remember reading that article and crying. And she's talking about Nightshades, and oh my gosh, I was just, and then I got angry that no one talked to me about that before. But I went headfirst. I went headfirst into paleo, Whole30s, autoimmune protocol, food eliminate. The minute I started seeing the changes in my body, my skin condition getting better, the weight was falling off. And I mean, that was almost 6 years ago. And I feel like I've just gone deeper into the rabbit hole. And in the process, started sharing food because I was cooking these meals that were healing my body, but they were delicious, yummy food that everyone around me was enjoying, my neighbors, my family. And I thought I should share these online because I have that skill set that I can make anything taste good. And that's how my blog, The Castaway Kitchen, was born. And then I published my first cookbook, then my second. I ended up going back to school. I got certified as a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I actually work with Dr. Campbell, who's a functional medicine practitioner, in her virtual clinic. as their in-house nutritionist. And, now I help other people heal through food.
Mm. I love that. I think that's so important. That's so critical how you found food as medicine, right? You really did find food as medicine and you've been able to heal. Your skin looks amazing.
Thank you.
And I always say, one of the programs I taught early on in my career was, what is it? Healthy digestion for a glowing complexion. I think that was the title. Healthy digestion for a glowing complexion, because our intestines are a reflection of our gut health and our skin health, right? Our skin is a reflection of our gut health, and that this can really make a really big difference in our body, in our life, in our energy level. And you are living proof, and that you found this at a young age and you stopped suffering. I mean, I commend you.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
yeah, because probably your doctors were just like, oh, well, it doesn't
Oh
matter.
no.
Food doesn't matter. And here's some more antibiotics or.
To get on birth control? Oh, they all wanted to put me on birth control. I had a doctor tell me that, and this was when I was already in remission. I'm like, look, doc, I'm in remission. I feel amazing. I was just doing a checkup. It was like, just whatever, an annual. And it was a military doctor because we were in Hawaii. And he told me, he's like, oh, that has nothing to do with it. Food has nothing to do with it. It's just a coincidence. Like, if you really wanted to heal, you would eat the wall if I told you. He's like, I do this all the time. I help people. I cut it out, the affected area, and I put them on birth control. And I was like, are you insane? And, they wound up putting me on Humira. And I'm like, you think that taking the pill would be harder than what I'm doing? Like, this is harder, but I was able to get in remission through diet alone. And I mean, people who don't understand this condition might not know, but it is debilitating. And I mean, I lived in tropical areas and I have scars on my skin now, but I don't care. I wear my no sleeves, my skirts, my bathing suits, and I'm happy because I'm not in pain and I can, do all the things I want to do. And yeah, I mean, diet and lifestyle. Lifestyle is important. Stress management, toxic environment, mindfulness, all that matters too. But it started with food. I think it's for me, and I think for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I love how bringing in stress management, how that's key. So talk to us about some of you've really, just have spanned the gamut in the eating patterns. And I know you've got Keto Green 16 in there too, but you also have 2 books out now. Yep. So can you show us your books and also talk about each one? Because I really have loved your work. You guys, for listening, she is the Castaway Kitchen on Instagram and always has some great stuff there.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is Made Whole, my first book, baby. And they're massive. And then this is my new one, Made Whole, Made Simple. And this one's made simple because all the recipes are simple: 1 pot, sheet pan, pressure cooker, slow cooker. And, Made Whole means to heal. So it's, both books are healing recipes. And I wrote them because, as people, okay, this is what you should eat. This is what's going to work. You're going to regulate your blood sugar. You're going to reduce inflammation. Maybe you have to omit foods. Like for me, one of my biggest trigger foods is nightshades. Highly reactive to nightshades and grains and, sugar.
So talk about nightshades. Tell us what nightshades are.
So tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and any kind of pepper, not black pepper, because those are berries actually, but like jalapeno, bell pepper, paprika, ancho chili. And, it's just all the foods have anti-nutrients in them. And some of us react specifically to some. I mean, some people are more sensitive to lectins, other ones to oxalates, but specifically nightshades for me, and I think for a lot more people than they realize, can have an inflammatory response. And I found this out through an elimination diet. I've done every test out there on food allergies, and they all come back negative. But if I eat gluten or nightshades, I will have swollen joints, brain fog, swollen gums, and then my skin will erupt.
And see, that's the perfect test, right? Is the elimination diet, eliminate them and then try them back in and see what happens to your body. So I have a daughter who has really had bullous acne. And all this time I told her, stay off the dairy, stay off, the gluten, stay off the grains, as much as possible. What can you tell a young 20-year-old who's invincible? She came back from a trip and she had just bullous acne, just terrible pustular acne all over her face, chest, back, really very similar to hidradenitis suppurativa, but all facial, and beautiful girl. And so I finally had her do the Viome test. I mean, we've done different food sensitivity tests in the past, but I had her do the Viome test. So she stuck with it this time. And so she had to eliminate dairy. She I'd eliminate red peppers and tomatoes. So the nightshades, right? I have to check and see if it said eggplant, but
Yeah.
definitely has made a tremendous, tremendous difference. I mean, we definitely went at her double barrel shotguns too. I mean, just I put her on a course of topical antibiotics and this, that, and the other, and really made her do just 3 days of shakes and just really work on intestinal health, probiotic. But the big thing has been that food elimination. And so she
Right.
knows when she tries something again, like, okay, what happened? What caused the breakout? What it, what's something else that we need to eliminate? And until we really
Right.
get the gut healed,
It's
and
going to keep happening.
it's going to keep happening. It's going to keep
Right.
happening.
Right. I think elimination protocols, and I have a section in my book. I cover them in my books quite often. I use autoimmune protocol mixed in with keto,
We'll
which I
talk
find
about
is like a,
autoimmune protocol. We hear that terminology. So
yeah.
clarify autoimmune
So autoimmune protocol or
protocol.
autoimmune paleo is I find it to be one of the gold standard of elimination diets because it removes all possible foods that might cause leaky gut or cause a reaction. So grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, seed-based spices, nightshades, nightshade-based spices, any additives to food, eggs, which is tough. And essentially you're just eating, you can eat meat and vegetables, but you have to obviously with staying away from, no dairy as well, no coffee, no chocolate, all that. And this, what I love about the autoimmune protocol, AIP for short, is that it's actually been studied now. There's been 2 different studies on it that I know headed up by Mickey Trescott and Angie All and some other people in the community. And they did show like a 75% remission, I'm not mistaken, with IBS. And they were just doing another one with Hashimoto's. And the results were pretty interesting.
And the work by Dr. Terry Walls on multiple
Oh,
sclerosis and her research, and
life-changing.
yes, life changing, life changing. So
Yeah.
again, there is no harm in doing this. We are not going to experience any nutrient defificiencies. We may
Right.
break up with some, bad habits during it, which
Right.
is really, really key, because many of these foods can have addictive nature. They are some of the foods that we crave the most.
Right.
And then that can really be a problem. So I didn't hear you mention sugar. What about sugar?
Oh,
What
sugar
was
as well. So on AIP, on the original autoimmune protocol, natural honey and maple syrup and molasses aren't limited, and there are a lot of starchy vegetables. And autoimmune protocol worked for me for a while, and then I started correlating flares to sugar and starchy vegetables. And TMI, but I honestly, as I mentioned, after I breastfed my son, I started breaking out with this hidradenitis suppurativa under my breast, and I had one spot on my left breast that would flare when I had specifically honey maple syrup or like cassava. And I called it, I nicknamed it my sugar boob, because it was like the minute I had sugar, like it would, and so I that's why I started kind of veering away from the traditional autoimmune protocol and kind of going more Terry Walls, where there is a reduction in the higher starch and the sugar, because people, of course, they're doing the elimination protocol. They're trying to cope with the cravings and this huge change. So they start, I say everyone standard Americanizes everything. Every diet can be made to have junk food, including keto and paleo and all of them. So people start getting really creative. Guilty too, with the cassava flour flatbread, and then you had whatever, and you can make all these things. But even though they're whole food based, they were spiking. I had insulin resistance, which wasn't helping me, which was causing that inflammation, which was causing the flare. Because HS isn't just an autoimmune disease, it's also autoinflammatory. So managing inflammation is key. So
Yes.
I kind of meshed AIP and keto together and found an elimination protocol that was so anti-inflammatory and so effective that I was able to kind of crush the inflammation, heal the gut, and then also reset the metabolism kind of at the same time. And
Awesome.
so,
Awesome. Let's talk about that and what that looks like menu wise and a day in the life, because this is important. I mean, looking at, okay, what's our next right step? Every step in the right direction is the next right step. Every step in discovery, what works for us or what doesn't work for us is the next right step. So, and I think that's really important that we look at these really science-based protocols and determine, okay, what works best for me based on my food sensitivities, based on my environment, based on where I live, based on the stress I'm under, based on the family I'm in, and and what's happened to our gut, our GI tract, the bacteria within our GI tract, our ability to digest. I mean, there's so many factors here. So I love plans that pull it together like yours does as well. And let's talk about what a day in your life looks like. And I also just want to add in here, the older we get, the less carbs we can tolerate, and that's a really important metabolic shift that we have to adjust to.
Right. Right. For sure. So with AIP, both my books they're paleo keto, but they're dairy free, nut free, nightshade free. So they're already very close to autoimmune protocol. Now there are some seed-based spices, there's some eggs in them because again, the elimination protocol is meant to be temporary and then you have to add foods back in a little bit at a time. So I add a lot of modifications for coconut free, or hey, if you can't do coconut, maybe you can do eggs, or can do nuts. And so those I'm like the substitution queen. Like, I mean, I think because my culinary skills, I can do that with recipes. I'm very good at that. So day in the life for me is, I mean, again, I've added a lot of foods back in, but I always say don't compare like my chapter 25 with your chapter 1 because I've been able to add a lot of foods in.
Right.
But I do coffee in the morning. I'm on decaf because I gave up caffeine in January. Game changer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a big one, but it was that last step where I'm like, and as you know, and again, even going lower carb as we get older, it's all about babying the adrenals, which get in charge of hormone production as we age. So cutting out caffeine.
It's a biggie. And I would tell clients until I wore the continuous glucose monitor and prepping for Keto Green 16 for my book and the recipes, I wore continuous glucose monitoring. So monitoring my sugar all throughout the day for 2 weeks at a row. And I've done it for a year now, on and off. But when I drank coffee in the morning, my blood sugar went up 20 to 30 points. So because my adrenal stress, cortisol, glucose, I mean, my glucose went up, and that was a really big eye opener for me. It's like, oh my gosh, that helped me understand a few things. Like when I go off caffeine and coffee for a week, I can lose 3 or 4 pounds, and so little things these things add up. We really need to understand what's happening to your body. And I love that you brought that in, the coffee with your adrenals. Absolutely.
Yes. Huge. So I do decaf coffee and I do homemade cashew milk, which I just water in cashews with a little bit of real salt. And I stir that in. And then I usually have my first meal between 12 and 1. I usually work out in the morning at some point mid-morning, depending on my schedule. But my meals are very simple. It's plants and animals. And I really think that people need to stick to the basics. So I love arugula. It's my favorite leafy green. It's peppery. I digest it really well. So getting a good, leftover ground beef or some fried eggs on a bed of arugula or some bratwurst. And then that's lunch. And then dinner is usually a little more labor intensive because I do love to cook. So I'll roast veggies. I'll make a nice sauce. I'll do some pan-seared proteins. And we do a lot of seafood. So I love fish. And that's one of my biggest things is omega-3s.
Yes.
Every day. And so we do a lot of smoked oysters or salmon, just different kinds of fatty fish. And and that's really what I eat. If I do have a snack in between, I'll do a protein shake with a dairy-free milk or some berries. I do with my cooking, people sometimes I get the question I get 900 times a day, is that keto? And I'm like, if it fits into your macros, keto isn't it's not a food list, it's a metabolic state. So I love using citrus and pineapple and peaches and different fruits to season my food, to make sauces, to add flavor, nutrient density.
And a little bit goes a long way, right? Just that little added flavor. And pineapple in Keto Green 16, I have my digestive fruit category. So that's papaya, pineapple, and mango. So that they can help with digestive fruits. And someone wrote in a review on Amazon, y'all. Listen, if you haven't reviewed Keto Green 16 with a 5-star review on Amazon yet, I do want your honest feedback. So I appreciate it. But this person said, well, there's pineapple in there. No way is that keto. I'm like, well, how much are you eating? And what about your digestion? Plus, I say, if it kicks you out of ketosis during this, then eliminate it. But to improve digestion and to have those little bit of carb bump in the evening helps with a good night's sleep. So
and also the metabolic flexibility, which I think is really important. So one of the things I think it's if you are having a little more carbohydrates, be more active. So you can have your pineapple, but go for a 15-minute walk afterwards. It's not going to spike your blood sugar. So I'm big on carbs. I have a whole section on kind of trying to really help people understand how our body uses fuel, because if you are not over consuming carbohydrates and eating them to your activity level, they're not all stored as fat automatically. You can be used as this fuel. You're going to use it right up. It's not going to be stored. It doesn't have to spike your blood sugar. And again, this is bio-individual depending on your metabolic health. But I think that there's a lot of young perfectly metabolically healthy people avoiding foods out of fear, not necessity. And
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good
that,
point. Hmm.
and so for me, I'm just like, well, let's just, and then, you have people like 20-year-olds doing CrossFit, fasted, and then like 10 grams of carbs a day. And then after a few months, they feel like they're crashing their adrenals. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, maybe CrossFit isn't the best exercise to
For
do
you, right. And
for
that's a
you.
really important point. We need to know what works for us right now. And I believe in metabolic flexibility. I always say like around 10% fasting, 80% keto green, 10% feasting. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Although,
Yes.
celebrating my 21st daughter's birthday, my 21-year-old daughter's birthday. She turns 21 today. So there's definitely some feasting going on in the background here.
Right. And the feasting fasting dynamic actually really works well for hormone health for women, where I
It
think
does.
men thrive a lot better on this like hardcore all the time, like linear kind of way of eating. We do better on a cyclical kind of way of eating. And I think obviously that makes sense because women are cyclical.
Yeah, it's true. And
So
that we need carbs. I know that I do for neurotransmitters, and I've done the research looking at this, and it really does. The quality of our food matters, the combinations of our food matters, and the periodic fasting intervals really, really matter, especially as
huge.
we're older. And it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see the science. But that just today published, and we're recording this in May. But just today, the dietary guidelines in America are evaluating diet plans, and that basically every every high fat diet basically has been excluded from the plan, which makes no sense whatsoever. So I think there's right now we are protesting about that, but incorporating all the low fat diets. And I was like, wait, based on what
Yeah.
science, right? Do we not see the obesity in America right now because of low fat diet? We need fats for hormones, and fats don't convert to sugar. So we need to really recognize that it's a combination approach of healthy foods. And looking at the Mediterranean diet, that's not a low fat diet. And crazy enough, on Amazon, as my book, I don't think they don't have a high fat diet category, but they have a low fat diet category. And my book made it into the low fat diet category. So who knows what Amazon's doing, y'all. So
No, it's so off. Mine did too for a while. And I was like, what?
what have you?
No,
Keto
no,
is
but
not low
I
fat. I know, how
no,
funny.
but I love that you bring up the fats though, and like how the guidelines they talk about low fat, but the problem is that they're talking about the wrong fats because even their low fat approach, they're like, oh yeah, just use like heart healthy canola oil, and so that's one of my biggest gripes. If you had to say one food that no human should be consuming is seed-based oils, vegetable oils. Like don't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Like it's not food. It's not meant to be consumed. It's the worst. And I really think that part of the issue in America, this obesity epidemic, the inflammation is highly rooted in like that, like who was it Danny Vega said on, and it was so great. He's like, you weaponize carbohydrates when you mix them with saturated fats, but also the combination of these inflammatory oils. So can you imagine like the American diet is the way they would have it consists of high carbohydrate, refined carbohydrates and refined vegetable oils. That's lethal combination. It blows my mind that that's even legal. Like,
I know. I know we're talking about saturated fats here. And, explain more about that and why.
right. Yeah. So saturated fats, they're not bad for you. I mean, as we know, okay, butter, bacon, all that stuff, it's not the villain it should be. However, when you have them with things that can cause inflammation, like carbohydrates, like sugar, you are going to get that, like, the clogged arteries, you are going to get that where they are dangerous, right? And so when you use monounsaturated fats, which is, we talked about Mediterranean, like they knew what they were talking about. Olive oil is like a really good fat. I mean, not only
Sure.
is it highly like protective, it not only does it have antioxidants, but it even protects the food you're cooking in it. So you can cook a salmon fillet with olive oil, and the polyphenols are going to protect the delicate omega-3s, the polyunsaturated fats. I mean, it's beautiful. And when you think of, how many centuries they've been cooking with olive oil, like in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, you're like, it just makes sense, right? So really, when it comes to the fats you want to eat, you want to think of things that come from nature, right? And think about their accessibility. And I think that that always makes sense. The quantity of how much you should be eating of something with how accessible it is when we think of that paleo template, right? So think about fish, think about olives and nuts, like, and the, how much of that would you be eating if you were foraging it, right? And think about saturated fat. It's not easy to render fat from animals, so you wouldn't have it in such an amount. You would really be consuming saturated fat in that whole food form from when you're just eating the animal instead of rendering it. So it just makes sense to really focus on, don't fear the red meat, don't fear, but when you're cooking with oils, stick to more of the monounsaturated, and then avoid the seed-based oils, which unless you have machinery, you can't make, because people don't also realize that olive oil and like avocado oil, they're not made from the seed, they're fruit. They're made from the fruit, they're pressed. So it's the pressed fruit that comes from the actual olive, which again, found in nature, easy to extract.
Which is amazing. So, and a recent study looking at soybean oil and how damaging that is can even affect the oxytocin receptors. So, can decrease our oxytocin. So, soybean oil is another really big, I mean, they're, like you said, no nos. So, I think
No,
that's a really important one, because many of the fried food from our favorite restaurants they're using soybean oil. So, when they make that
all
switch,
restaurants.
all
All restaurants
restaurants
use
really.
canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, peanut, like essentially. And if you're eating, unless they specifically say, like, and you're in like, I don't know, LA or like Portland, those like hipsters using like better, but in most restaurants, and I know I worked in the restaurant business, no one's using olive oil to cook with, or, they're all using seed-based oil and vegetable oils. Don't let them lie. They're not made from vegetables. They're all made from seeds.
Okay, that's good to know
Yeah.
when we think about that
Yeah.
with vegetable oil. Now, what about MCT or coconut oil? How do you feel about that?
So interestingly enough, there actually was a study that I was going over with a colleague of mine the other day that did make some connections with even that coconut saturated fats being a little inflammatory and causing some issues. And I noticed I relied so heavily on coconut early on and when I went AIP and paleo, but noticed a reduction in symptoms when I lowered my coconut intake. So I think MCT oil can be great as a supplement, used sparingly, like if you want to add a little bit to a smoothie or maybe to your coffee, but I don't think you need to be drinking it every day. And then I think coconut oil, the same thing. I find myself just make sure it's in a rotation with, like, you can use ghee, you can use coconut oil, but don't use it for everything all day, every day. Mix it in with the olive oil, with the avocado oil. So you're using it maybe for something higher heat cooking, if you want to fry something,
Mm-hmm.
not every day, not all the time. So definitely still, it's a natural option. It's not as inflammatory as, the canola oil or whatever, but
Yeah,
I found
that's an
myself.
interesting study. That's an interesting study that was released looking at that, that MCT could be pro-inflammatory when we're looking at it. I definitely want to dig more into that study and see, but in general, rule of thumb, don't do the same thing every day, every day.
Variety, it's key. It's key
Variety.
for keeping that, like, your body, and even people say, oh, what is it? The IgE, GG came back and it said I'm allergic to, I don't know, let's think of like a really random food, like tuna,
Right. Or
and like,
garlic. My daughter had a
or
garlic
garlic.
one show up.
But it's like, but if you eat it every single day, well, how often are you eating tuna? Well, I eat it almost every day. I'm like, well, that's why, because your body is creating antibodies to it. Anything that you're
Right.
consuming all the time,
Right.
you're going to have antibodies present. So
Yeah,
keeping that variety.
keeping that variety, and just on that note with heavy metals in tuna. So
Right.
probably not more than once or twice a week on tuna.
Right. That's true. Exactly.
But that's a big thing too. So what are your favorite fish, looking at low mercury fish?
Yeah. So obviously the smaller ones are great. So, I mean, as far as really environmentally friendly and nutrient dense, sardines, like you can't go wrong with sardines. And like the smaller, the mackerels are really good too, herring. And they've got really good omega-3 ratios. I do love some wild caught salmon, although I feel like it's harder and harder to find good wild caught salmon. And I also really like cod, cod and mahi and stuff like that. But we definitely, the ones we have on a regular basis, I would say are sardines, the smoked oysters, and I get canned ones from Crown and Prince, and they're packed in olive oil. They're delicious. And they're not fishy, for those of you like being like, ew, they're super meaty and really yummy. And then and we do salmon fresh or even canned sometimes, and make like little salmon cakes from them, and just kind of, the kids love it. Like I make these little salmon balls and we can just like pan fry them, and like you bake them with like Primal Kitchen mayo, and it's so good.
I love it. And I love Primal Kitchen mayo. That is
Yeah.
some good stuff.
It's good
So
stuff.
that is good stuff. Yeah, no, I love it. And so just if the people who are listening that have been struggling with skin conditions, aches and pains, joint pains, what would you suggest for their next right step in a food elimination?
So if they're already like, well, I've been already doing keto and I've already been, for a long time and I still don't, have XYZ symptoms. The first one, if you're doing like regular keto, is go dairy free. And I know it's hard for a lot of people because traditional keto relies so heavily on dairy, but I try to remind people that was like the masked kind of like, it was the medical keto was never dairy heavy. It was always very paleo centered, a
Mhm.
paleo approach. It became popular because of course dairy makes everything easy. But if your diet's consisting of like mostly cream cheese and shredded mozzarella, like that's probably not good. It's not even high quality dairy at that. So dairy is the first one. Then I would say nuts. And if that doesn't help, then I'd say we'd have to go full blown, like let's go bare bones, like
Yeah.
leafy greens, protein, and then we'll start adding in things from there. But one thing I do tell people is that elimination protocols don't address the root cause always. They give your body a break to heal, but like you said, there's oftentimes underlying causes. How many people are running around taking antacids or different medications that are wreaking havoc on their GI? Not just lower, but upper GI. And so like another thing I've been like, which I cover and made simple that in the digestion, it's like the simple things that people don't realize. Like I love mineral water. I drink Topo Chico. I
Topo
love,
Chico's my
it's the
favorite
best.
too. I
Right.
know. There's like a groupie,
Yeah.
there's a fan club for Topo
It's a
Chico.
cult, but I don't drink it with my meals. I try and like, because you don't want to drink a lot of
Exactly.
liquid with your meals and carbonated beverages, and you want to optimize that upper digestion. So the food is broken down properly before it reaches your gut, or you're going to be causing that leaky gut. You're going to be causing the dysbiosis. People are like, it keeps happening over and over again. I'm like, well, are you chewing your food? Are you drinking too much liquid with your meals? Are you stressed out when you eat? People don't like this simple kind of like right in front of your face habits that they're not changing. Or medical history, like I took Nexium and and all the antacids for years in my 20s, so I had to do serious repair with
Hmm.
digestive enzymes and some HCl and like, and it was, and I remember, and like now when we see in clinic when we with clients, it's a major thing, that recurring digestive stuff, because they're not watching their habits. And then of course we do the GI map, we do stool test a lot analysis and look at, for
That's one
gut
of my
infection.
favorite
So good.
testing, GI map. Hmm.
Yeah. And so again, a lot of people are running around with, I can't get rid of my things, but you just changed your diet, but you weren't kind of seeing what's under the hood. So I tell people, and now these at-home tests, and yes, I get that they give people some insight, but people ask, what do you think about the Everly Well? And I'm like, honestly, the test is only as good as the practitioner you have to help you read it and then address the cause. So I'm a big fan of like, find a practitioner and work with them, because the practitioner is going to have a protocol that's effective, that's been tested. And again, like just doing an antimicrobial protocol on your own is not recommended if you do have SIBO or you have, H. pylori, or just a dysbiosis. So yeah, if you have symptoms, if you're still bloating, if you can't eat anything and you're like, everything makes me bloat, or you have diarrhea and constipation, like one or the other alternating, get your gut tested, because you're not going to address that root cause just by diet, unfortunately.
Yeah, and weaning off of antacids and weaning off of these medications can really take some time, but it is so worth it. It is 100% worth it for our brain health, neurotransmitter health, aging, for
Yes.
healthy aging, to reduce our risk of all inflammatory conditions down the line. We have to
Right.
get off of these antacids. And I've done a couple great webinars, as written about it in some of my blogs, but also just in that the whole concept of stop drinking with your meals. That is one of the key
Huge.
culprits to
Key.
digestive issues. It is huge.
Yes.
Well, Cristina, I've loved
Hyper-GI.
talking about you. Let's talk
Yeah.
about your books and then where people can find you. I already
Yeah.
recommend that they check out your Instagram page, The Castaway Kitchen.
Thank you. Yeah, really active on social, always sharing stuff on there. So both my books are available anywhere books are sold. Made Simple, which is easy recipes, and this one covers the foundations of health. So covers digestion and a lot we talked about today, and the habits for digestion and how to optimize the hydration, mineral balance, fatty acid balance, and blood sugar regulation, metabolic flexibility. Super easy recipes in here, and the books all have a picture for every single recipe and macros for everything, and a meal prep plan. This one is, it combines paleo, keto, and AIP, and has 5 meal plans, including an AIP keto reset. Like we talked about that serious elimination protocol, and has just a ton of resources for cooking and like how to like just get your kitchen set up for like a whole food kitchen. So they're massive. They're both like, this one's over 400 pages. This one's almost, but
Wow.
they're
I love them.
and
Perfect.
yeah, anywhere books are sold, you can find on Amazon, online, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, wherever.
Thank you. Well, we're gonna do some cooking videos
Yes.
together, and we'll do that on social as well. We'll record some for our Keto Green community, and I look forward to doing those and sharing you
Me
more with my
too.
community. I love what you're doing,
Yeah.
and I'm really
Likewise.
proud
I
of
love your
you.
new book. It's so
Thank
good.
you.
Yes.
Well, I'm proud of you for not giving up, and what an example you're setting for so many
Thank you.
young women everywhere. So, and men too, men completely struggling with so many
Yes.
conditions. I mean, they've been protected with their androgenic hormones for a while, but it has
It's cracking up.
shifted now. They're really, really struggling too.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with us today on the
My
Girlfriend
pleasure.
Doctor podcast.
Thank
And
you.
I'll provide links to your books and you as well in the show notes. So you guys check that out. And I will be back with you in just a moment. Recording intro for Castaway Kitchen on the Girlfriend Doctor. Eating and how we nourish our body can be so complex. And some clients, some women, and maybe you are suffering from conditions that can be resolved completely by what you're eating. Today's guest on the Girlfriend Doctor podcast is Cristina from the Castaway Kitchen. She is the author of a couple fabulous books. Made Whole is her most recent one, and this is a fabulous time to discuss what makes us healthier and happier, and how that can really affect our lives and heal from so many conditions. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Anna Cabeca. I'm the Girlfriend Doctor, and it is my mission and my passion to help women live better lives before, during, and after menopause. So welcome to the Girlfriend Doctor podcast, an intimate place for intimate conversation, and I am here for you. You can ask or tell me anything. This is a place of no shame, no guilt, no apologies, and we pull back the curtain on all things related to women's health. And our goal is to shine light on your overall wellness, mind, body, and spirit. So let's get started with the Castaway Kitchen author, brand just amazing woman, Cristina. So happy to share her with you. Cristina Curp is the creator of the Castaway Kitchen, a popular food blog and online community dedicated to delicious healing recipes. She's the author of best-selling cookbook Made Whole and recently released Made Whole, Made Simple. And she holds a BA in anthropology from Florida International University and is a certified nutritional therapy practitioner. She is on a mission to educate people about the healing power of real food. And you can find her online at the Castaway Kitchen. And she's also the co-host of Body Wise podcast. So here we go. Recording outro. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. And to hear Cristina's journey, how she struggled with hidradenitis suppurativa for decades, and how that can really affect our body image, and knowing how simply it was, simple with hard work. Let's not underline the word simple here, because it is hard work to change a lifestyle, to especially culturally in certain areas, growing up with certain foods. I mean, there are certain foods that can be working against us that are part of our heritage, and it is a challenge to break up with that. For example, just simply taco shells, or for me, sfija, and different foods and desserts that we really love, but we break up with these, and we really need to break up with them for good. But as I say that, it is a process of healing the gut, healing our immune system, and healing our mind as we accomplish these tasks. And what a huge accomplishment it is. It absolutely is. I know from hearing stories of women in my community that have taken the Keto Green 16 challenge and have absolutely up-leveled their life, turned their life around, rid themselves of so many diagnoses and symptoms that it's really, honestly, I say this is the gift of God in the work that I do, because we have to make these changes. And it's not just about one thing. As you heard Cristina and I say, it's not just about the food. There are so many lifestyle factors that we incorporate into our life that can really change the way we feel and improve our health overall. So thrilled with the success of our Keto Green 16 challenge and our Keto Green community that is so active on Facebook. I hope y'all will join me there. And please share this episode and check out Cristina's books. I look forward to seeing you next week.